you accept what we want, and you can live on a carpet of gold, or we will bury you under a carpet of bombs. Now, this is in August. Now, in September, the World Trade Center is blown up. Turn the lights back on. Now, brothers and sisters, you may not want to believe this, but somebody knew that that was going to happen. This book that's out in France is called Bin Laden, La Vérité Interdite. Bin Laden, the Forbidden Truth. That pipeline would allow a cheap oil to come 790 miles through Afghanistan, into Pakistan, into the Arabian Sea, and into the Indian Ocean. Now, on September the 11th, if you go to a website called www.unknowncountry.com, an analyst by the name of Jim Mars writes this. He has a book out that I'm going to name in a minute. This man now writes in this article, and he raises questions that many of us were thinking about. How could an obviously sophisticated terrorist plan involving perhaps as many as 100 persons and in the works for 5 years escape the notice of our intelligence services, especially the FBI and the CIA? Why did the South Tower collapse first when it was not as extensively damaged as the North Tower, which burned for almost an hour and a half before collapsing? These are just questions. Why did many witnesses claim to hear further explosions within the buildings? And why did the destruction of the World Trade Center towers appear more like a controlled implosion than a tragic event? These are questions. Here's a man that the minute it came on CNN, he went and got the passenger list of all the planes. And not one Arab name was on the manifest of none of the 4 planes that went down. Are you listening? As none of these listed passengers had an Arabic-sounding name, how did the government know who were the hijackers? Why did the seat number of the hijackers given by a cell phone call from flight attendant Madeline Amy Sweeney to Boston Air Traffic Control not match the seats occupied by the men the FBI claimed were responsible? Since Saudi Arabia's foreign minister claimed 5 of the proclaimed hijackers were not aboard the death planes and in fact are still alive, And a sixth man on that list was reported to be alive and well in Tunisia. Why are these names still on the FBI list? Why were none of the named hijackers' names on any of the passenger lists? If they all used aliases, how did the FBI identify them so quickly? Why does the heavy drinking and searching for hookers by some of the hijackers in Boston, as reported by Reuters news service, sound more like mercenaries carousing before a mission than pious religious fundamentalists about to meet their maker? These are questions. Now, brothers and sisters, look. My teacher one day, Elijah Muhammad, he was teaching on the west side, and I was over there, and we were driving back to his house, and he said to me, "Brother, do you know any man in whom there is no good at all?" And I said, "No, sir." He looked back at me and he said, "Brother, you cannot fathom the depth of Satan." And my suggestion here is, anybody whose depth we cannot fathom is somebody that we cannot deal with. Paul said it right. We war not against flesh and blood. See, we have seen common white people as our enemies, and many of them have been and are. But the real enemy, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told me, "I don't want you to use the word devil anymore," the language, he said, "Use the term Satan." The slave master's children, the enemy. Now, Satan is that kind of mind that is operated at the highest levels. Principalities, powers, the rulers of the darkness of this world, and spiritual wickedness in high places. What we're dealing with here, you don't even have the kind of mind to think that somebody would calculate such a destruction to produce a climate that they could then rip away the freedoms of the American people in the name of a war. Now, I want you to think with me. Why did one of the name hijackers take luggage on a suicide flight, then leave it along with an incriminating note in his car at the airport with a Holy Quran and some Arabic writing? Think if you saw the movie The Long Kiss Goodnight. In that movie was Samuel Jackson. The government was making a plan and making a bomb. And there was Samuel Jackson and a young white woman. What's her name? Gina who? Davis. They were interfering with the plan. And when they were caught and about to be killed, the mastermind of it said, when it was told to him, but if you set that bomb off, 4,000 people will die. And the man said, well, we've already calculated that, but we'll just blame it on the Muslims and go to the government and get Congress to give us the money for defense that they have been denying us. This is in a movie. My granddaughter told me that if you put on, it's in the Microsoft software, you have a picture of the Twin Towers being destroyed with a skull and crossbone and the Star of David. This is long before this thing went down. This man writes that in 1993, the FBI had an informant among the Arabs who were planning to bomb the World Trade Center in 1993. And knowing their plans, he was going to put a harmless powder in the bomb so that it wouldn't go off. And according to this, they let it happen. You say, they would never do something like that. But guess what? According to this man's writings, there's a book out. I just bought it. What's the name of that book? Body of Secrets. In this book, they're talking about the army desiring to do some terrorist activity and blame it on the Cubans so that the anesthetized American public would be calling for revenge. Then they could attack Cuba, and that would be the predicate for that attack. And JFK suspended or dismissed that plan, and they were supposed to destroy it. But this man has the document in his book. Now, family, Afghanistan has been at war for over 20 years. Did you know that Zbigniew Brzezinski, when he was the national security advisor of President Carter, started funding quote-unquote fundamentalists in Afghanistan because the government in Kabul was a pro-Soviet government. 6 months before the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, America was involved covertly, knowing that the Soviets would have to come in to stop this. And Brzezinski was on television in Europe saying that, according to this writing, once the Soviet Union got into Afghanistan, he said, they will have our Vietnam. 10 years of fighting the Muslims and losing is what led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, brothers, look at the type of bombs that our country dropped on the Afghan people. There's one bomb called the Daisy Cutter. 15,000 pounds. The only thing after that is an atomic bomb. They never used it before, but they used it in Afghanistan. The bomb is so tremendous that it incinerates everything in a 600 to 700 yard length. I don't know how wide, but that crater that it develops, and it sets everything on fire. This is what they were dropping on our brothers in Afghanistan. I'm a Muslim, and I love Muslims wherever they are found on the earth. I don't agree necessarily with the extremist views of the Taliban, but I don't know them. I've never talked to them. I understand that their ambassador was here in the United States talking with our government officials, and some of them wanted to meet with me, but I never got the message. Maybe it's all for the best, because right now America wants to hear no voice that is out of line with President Bush's desire. In my conclusion, do you remember on the 16th, I mentioned an experience that I had in 1985. In that experience, I was told that the president had met with the Joint Chiefs of Staff to plan a war, and I was told to hold a press conference and tell them the plan and tell them that I got it from Elijah Muhammad on the wheel. Within 3 months after I had that experience, it was clear to me that the war was against Libya. In my letter to the president, I'm trying to say to him a pattern of behavior of American presidents and administrations since Nixon said that the real enemy of democracy is not communism, but fundamentalist Islam. He wants to destroy fundamentalist Muslims throughout the Muslim world. These so-called fundamentalists are pure. Though some may be extreme, they sincerely want to see the caliphate reestablished, and they want to see Islam and the rule of the law of the Quran applied in every country that says they are Muslim. If these men are destroyed, they will have effectively destroyed the voice that is calling the Islamic world back to correctness. And the moderate voices that are the leaders that have good relationships with the West are those leaders that these fundamentalists are speaking out against. So if these so-called fundamentalists are wiped out and accused of being terrorists when they're really Islamic purists, then America will aid in the destruction of the Renaissance of Islam. President Bush is not satisfied with Afghanistan. That's why he said, this is just the beginning. But you can see the hawks in the government beating the drum to go after Saddam Hussein. Go after Muammar Gaddafi. Go after Syria. Go after the Sudan. The words that the American press used of Osama bin Laden is very far from what Osama bin Laden actually said. They have to make an enemy. Well, he's already against what America represents. There's no question about that. But he admits he had nothing to do with September the 11th. He's the type of man that would say what he did. And gloat and take pleasure in telling you. He only agreed with what was done, but admitted he had nothing to do with it. I'm almost finished. Beloved, I can't be an apologist for Osama bin Laden, but Osama bin Laden said it was against Islam to kill non-combatants, women and children, according to the way they translated his words. He definitely is against America and the West. Fundamentalists want nothing to do with the West. They forbade the culture of the West. You won't find NSYNC. You won't find Britney Spears. You won't find Madonna. You won't find Michael Jackson. And you won't find the rappers calling women bees and prostitutes coming over their airwaves. If they have to deny their country the advancement of the internet and satellite, they don't want that filth feeding the minds of their young people. Imagine Islam growing in America and Muslims don't drink. Imagine. A true Muslim is not going to seek out a prostitute, nor make one. A true Muslim would be respectful of the churches and synagogues, temples and cloisters of those who believe differently from us. The true Muslim would have a political agenda, a moral correctness that would indeed interfere with the cultural norms. So they don't want no Islam. So they must make women believe that if you become a Muslim, you become a slave. The truth is, in Islam and in your culture, before our fathers were brought to America to be made slaves, we never undressed our women. To display you in a way that triggers in men lust. When the prophet asked them to lower the hem of their garments and put some covering over their bosoms, he was doing this as a protection for women. Because as long as your beauty is manifest, you walk the street, men start hitting on you, being disrespectful to you. So Islam doesn't want to make you a slave. Islam wants to free you. And that's why I say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad started quietly a beautiful revolution. He didn't cover your faces or your hands. He only asked you to cover yourselves that men would not be tempted by the beauty of your form. And every one of the women that followed his guidance initially were mocked, but then we became respected and honored. When men know that they just can't whistle at you because you are not a dog. When men know they can't just hit on you because it's bootylicious. When men know the value of a virtuous woman, then you become honored and lifted. That's what the prophet wanted. And that's what Elijah Muhammad brought into existence. Now, I'm closing now. Beloved Muslims, some of those who are extreme want nothing to do with the West. To my Muslim extremist family, why did Prophet Muhammad say, peace be upon him, that the sun that you see rising in the east, in the latter days, you would see it rising from the west? So if the West is bad, and we should reject everything of the West, then you will reject the light that will come to the east from out of the West. So those who want to say that the West is all bad and we should not look at nothing that the West has to offer, Allah says, to Allah belong the East and the West. Whithersoever you turn, there is the presence of Allah, for Allah is all-pervading and all-knowing. And it is not righteousness that you turn your faces toward East or West, but it is righteousness to believe in Allah and the last days and the angels and the book and the messengers, to spend of your sustenance out of love for Him, for your kin, for orphans, for the needy, for the wayfarer, for those who ask, and for the ransom of slaves, and to be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity, to fulfill contracts which you have made, and to be firm and patient in pain or suffering and adversity, and throughout all periods of panic. Such are the people of truth, the God-fearing. So those of you who think that everything out of the West is bad, this is why we have been raised in the West. Because coming up in America, we have the sense to extract the best that the West has to offer and marry it to the best of our world of Islam. There is no need for us to have a war of civilization, because the West has much to learn from Islam, and Muslims have much to learn from the West. So in my appeal to our president, these kinds of machinations to set the American people at odds with Muslims is their fear of the spread of a religion that they cannot stop its spread. Allah will make His way overcome all. It does not mean rituals. It means that obedience to God will overcome rebellion to God. And every Christian that will obey God by following Jesus purely is my brother and sister in faith. And every Jew that will obey the commandments of God set down by the prophets, that is my brother in faith. And so there's no way in heaven or hell that I will ever be an enemy to my Christian family. And I will never allow even the slander and propaganda of some of my Christian brothers who attack me because they don't understand. I will not retaliate or respond in a negative way toward my Christian family. And what I'm saying to Christians, black Christians, you are the best Christians on the planet, because Jesus has entered your hearts and you love Him with a pure love, which is good. But now, following Him, walking after Him, is a little bit more difficult than proclaiming Him. And never worship Him, for Jesus never wanted us to worship Him. He wanted us to worship that He called His Father. Read the scriptures and you will know this. So if you say you're going to obey God, and we say we're going to obey God, and all those who wish to obey God, we are one community. We are one community. So I thank Allah for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I thank Allah for the skill and wisdom that he used in bringing us up free of those conflicts that spread our religion, not necessarily through argument, but we in the West have no thought of a sword. There's no Muslim in here that has a thought of a sword. You will never find Muslims coming with an army telling you believe in Allah or die. Because we believe that we have been given in this Quran the best arguments. And we are told to argue in the best manner, not to defeat Christians or Jews or Zoroastrians or Buddhists, but to make us to see that God is one. His people are one. His religion is one. So from this day forward, never fight for a label. Fight for the principle that undergirds the label. Never say, well, I'm a Christian and therefore I will not walk with a Muslim. If you can open your Bible and you can't find the word Christian in the mouth of Jesus, but you find obedience to God in his mouth, then you go back and you read the gospel and obey. And you will become Christ-like. And nobody can deny the beauty of us if we are Christ-like. Nobody can deny our beauty if we follow the sunnah of the prophet. You just can't be ugly. And I believe, this is Brother Farrakhan talking, that Elijah Muhammad gave us himself to look at so that we would not get caught up in the deviation of our world of Islam. Please know that the Mahdi comes to set down all tyrants. And you can be a tyrant in Islam. You can be a tyrant as a Christian. And some of us who were given the law, the restrictive law by Elijah Muhammad, some of us used it and administrated it in a tyrannical way. So you produce dislike for what people should love. There is a better way than the way of the extreme. So the Quran said, avoid extremes. Let us do that. May Allah bless Muslims with a blessed Ramadan. Now it's dark and it's time for iftar and prayer. And I want to say openly and publicly that the FBI, from what I understand, called one of our brothers down. And they said that they were from National Security Agency, working with the National Security Agency. And they questioned my little brother, do you know any Cubans? Because they watch my house night and day. and they knew that I had been visited by a member of the Cuban mission to the UN. Do you know any Cubans? And thanks to God, he had the presence of mind to be with a lawyer. And they began to talk about Castro as a terrorist. But they're building their case now. So don't be surprised if one day they come to arrest Brother Farrakhan. I don't carry a penknife. I have never harmed any person, black, white, nor do I have any intention of doing that. But if I speak these kinds of truths, or you, Reverend Al, or you, Dr. Salam, or Imam Bashir, or if any Christian minister will stand, if you, Ali Baghdadi, if you, Sheikh Tijani, any of us that will stand for what is right and true, and it questions the movement of our government, we could be arrested, detained, and an era of persecution begin unlike we've seen it since we have grown up in the United States of America. I don't know how prepared I am for that eventuality, but I truly want to be like Abraham was when he said, my prayer, my sacrifice, my life and my death is all for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. I have no king but Allah. I know no God but Allah. And I believe that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ended the prophecies of the prophets and brought to us a book that would lead us up to the judgment of this world. But I also believe that Elijah Muhammad had a masterful exegesis of Quran, that we will grow more and more and more into the deeper meanings of this book, which we're going to have to practice. So, dialogue between Muslims and Christians, not to say who's better, but I know that my brother, Reverend Al Sampson, when I started this work to rebuild, my brother offered me his church as a meeting place. How could I deny him? I grew up in the church. It was a wonderful growing up. I will never fight that. All I will fight is ignorance. And what are false ideas and concepts, but not fight it in a way that I think I'm better or we are better. But if you know something, you have a duty to teach it. So, beloved Muslims, be strong. I know why they question that, brother. Because they've been building a case against me for how many years, Lou? About 25 years. They have been trying to get me since one of our ministers was murdered down in Texas. I don't have any army. I have people that respect me and honor me, and it is an army, but not an armed army, but it is militant. And I say that we have to be militant where Islam is concerned, not aggressive. But militant means that we must be disciplined Muslims. I have been invited to speak to the Muslim world on Al Jazeera and on NBC. And I intend, with God's help, to do that. But I didn't want to do that before I got this letter off to the president. This is a great country. In spite of all its shortcomings, I've heard more Islam on television, and they're really trying to explain our faith. So each one of us has a duty to become knowledgeable of what you believe. And you can never be a knowledgeable Christian and not read the Bible. And we can never be knowledgeable Muslims and not study the Quran. In closing, dear family, don't let the enemy make you an enemy of yourself. Don't allow them to frighten you out of a job to make you an informant. That would make you a very weak person. They don't need you as an informant. They bug our homes, our telephones, our fax machines, and all these little gadgets that you got where you send your little messages. So don't you think that they don't know what we're talking about. But we don't care that they know, because we're not planning anything evil. All we are planning is for righteousness. So family, as I dismiss you, listen, as I dismiss you, study and spread the gospel. Never by threats, but by the solid, sound arguments of the book. When Jesus said, "Go ye into all the world and teach," not fight, teach this gospel. Let's do that. But be ready to defend your faith and your person if you are attacked. And remember, if anything happens to any of us, we are all involved. Just never be caught wrong. We can't come to your aid if you're going to be out there selling drugs and say you're a Muslim. I can't come to your aid. We can't come to your aid. We can only come to your aid if you, like we, are striving to be right. May Allah bless you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the time that you gave us this afternoon. I'm sorry for our little glitches, but I thank them for this beautiful screen and projector. I thank the brother for his work. Thank you, dear brother Roland. Is it Roland? And this is brother Dawood. Brother Roland, thank you for the sound. It was wonderful. Thank you for the screen. It was wonderful. We just never did this before. We never were coordinated. But we did. It didn't turn out too bad. We got to fire the light man. I want to say to Dr. Salam and Imam Bashir, and there must be lawful dialogue that we grow in Islam. We don't know how much time we have left, but we want to leave a proper legacy, that we did all that we could for the cause of truth and the advancement of a body of people into the knowledge of Islam. And we must provide the world with an example of Islam that is from the West, that is not extreme, but have adopted the middle path. That's the path of God. I thank you, Brother Ali Baghdadi, for your presence, and Sheikh Tajani, and all the Muslims that came. My dear brother, give me that name, I'm sorry, Askia. I want to thank you, Brother Imam, for inviting me to be present when you invited Imam Warithuddin Muhammad and Reverend Shula in this beautiful evening that we shared together. I enjoyed your presentation that night, and it seems as though the more we grow, we're not growing this way, we're growing this way. And this is a wonderful thing. I think in this dark hour, it's the greatest hour of opportunity for Muslims and Christians and Hebrews to bring the purity of faith without going backward in time. We are in the 21st century, and this Quran is made for this century. It can guide us in every technological advancement. The Quran is there to give us guidance. So we don't need necessarily to go back to adopt necessarily the dress of the prophet or the beard of the prophet, but the way. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Bishop Kim. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Amina. Where's Sister Amina? So, those of you who will come to the house, we're going to break our fast. Thank you. Oh, Sister Helena Muhammad. Where's Sister Helena? Oh, you got to come forward. 93 years of age. May I? Dr. Harold White and his wife. Oh, doctor, thank you so much for your presence. And your wife, where is she? Thank you for your presence. And I hope and I pray that Christians and Muslims, we will not let what goes on make us to turn on each other. But let's get America up out of the dark ages. Oh, look at you. Mother, thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Yes. Yes. She said she remembers me when I came in the nation as a little Muslim. She was here to welcome her little son, and she's like a mother to me and to all of you because she was here during the time of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and she's 93 and looks so beautiful. 92. Now, I'm approaching 70. I'm leaning heavy on 70. And I hope and pray that Allah will bless me with a few more years of life, that we can set ourselves on elevated ground as obedient servants of God. Thank you, Mother, for being with us today. And if you would like to have dinner with me today, or whoever's with you, well, Sister Ernestine.
And the brother, Muhammad, he's my...
well, whoever she's with.
Let me see. If I can't think of his name...
That's all right. Come with Mother. Come on over to the National House and let's break bread. Dr. Salam, I'll be calling you this week so we can break some bread. Brother Bashir, thank you for your faithfulness in Islam. We got a lot of work to do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.